G'day, folks. It's the coach, and I have the dad bods ready to go. Get out your Noblars, get out your men traps. We are talking Ogre Mawtribes, and I've actually this time put the right header on the show. Am joined by Chris, aka Vamdad, who recently took out Old Town Throwdown, and I've been really curious about this army because we are in this monster meta. We are playing in a game that currently is rewarding you from having monsters, and one of the most scariest monsters in the game is Stonehorns running at your face. And I'm curious to learn from Chris. Is it just about the Stonehorns? Is there some love for the little dad bods out there? Is it the time for the Noblar? Is there a time for the scrap launcher? Or what on earth is going on in the Moorpot? But Chris, welcome. Hello. Good to have you on the channel.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, when you were talking about the dad bods there for a second, I thought you were taking a crack at me. But yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah. Ogres are great. I've been having a lot of fun with them lately.
Ogres are great. Like, there was a time where ogres were really bad. And I remember playing ogres right at the start when, skeletal skin or that stone skin that you all had was a complete nightmare. It was a complete nightmare. It was absolutely made me cry. My little free guild, with trying to chip away with some swords and that skeletal skin. And you had this time where you're a bit trash. You kind of came back up in the meta. You got this combo book, and is it the time of ogres? Is it the time that we're going to fill the Moorpot?
I think it is. I mean, ogres are very strong in the current meta, and you maybe not see that from some of the stats you see out there. But I think that's because everyone's playing Boulderhead. You gotta mix it up a little bit. There's a lot of good builds in there. Obviously, Stonehorns are super strong, and you always want to have a Frost Lord in your list these days because that attack profile, the impact hits, just the 5-up feel no pain with the 3-up save is super strong. I mean, on any monster, but when you're coupling that with his damage output, you really want to have that in your list. And yeah, I've been playing with them only for a little bit, so only since Feast of Bones dropped, and I picked up a couple boxes of that and was messing around with it. Mostly just casual games, running some gut busters and messing around with Warcry war bands, and they were pretty strong in Warcry. A lot of salt in those games, so I had to shelve them with that for a little bit. I've been enjoying the army a lot. It's been kind of a slow build for me since then. But then with COVID and kind of taking on a new army project, I really dug deep into ogres, and actually got a buddy of mine gifted me a bunch of ogres as he was kind of like clearing out some of his backlog, and he said, "Hey, man, here, take this to add to your collection, put it to use." And so that's what I've been trying to do. Been playing with them pretty much primarily as my main army since about the beginning of the year. I ran it in the Butcher's Tribe. That's one of Passus events. So that was like the first
the Butcher's Buffet.
Yeah, it was Butcher's Buffet was I think his first event. That was the singles. The Butcher's Tribe was the team one. So it was me and a couple other buddies. And so I was running Destruction, and then I had another buddy running Seraphon for that filth, another friend doing OBR, and we ended up taking the event out. We won the whole thing. Which was surprising, because there's some heavy hitters in there. But
that's a humble brag there. So Chris, definitely Chris has the skills, and I'm really keen to learn from you. And before I do that, MS Paul's asking, have we made jokes about the layers yet? The ogres having layers?
Yes, like an onion.
Like an onion. But most importantly, they are deadly as ever. They're deadly as ever.
Yeah, well, they do have layers, right? You've got the Stonehorn, outer crust, and then you kind of get lower into that, and then when you get to the juicy bit in the center, it's the Noblars. Yeah,
I think you're going to say that it's the Beast Riders and maybe a Thunder Tusk in the middle.
But, no, like if if you play them long enough, you realize that if you're leaning heavily into BCR, that you need screens, because those big bodies, they're very vulnerable to getting an alpha strike, or just getting tabled by some of the scarier stuff out there. You've got Vampire Lords on zombie dragons coming at you hard, and they can take a Stonehorn off the table in one round of combat. So you've got to have some bodies up front.
On the flip side, though, you've also got the tools to handle those. I know when I was playing Suns, I always hated playing against a Beast Claw Raiders build, especially in the Ogor Mawtribes. I hated it because you had the speed, you could disarm so many of my abilities, and it's just tough. It was a tough matchup.
Yeah. They definitely have the tools. It's just about getting the charge off first and not getting charged, keeping your options open. So yeah, there's definitely some strong punch there, but you want to be the one to throw the first one. So
if I learned anything from Howe Twitch, when we did the last show in second edition, he said ABCs, it's always be charging. You got to remember, you'll always be charging. And you talked a little bit about the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. Let's go back to like third edition. How have you found
second edition?
No, I'm talking like let's go back to third edition. Let's just talk a bit about like the high level stuff of third. How have you found the Ogor Mawtribes have taken on third edition, whether it's the board size, the coherency, the battle tactics, the grand strategies, the more customization, the more command abilities? What's your take so far, and what they've gained, I guess, in the new world?
Well, it definitely, Beast Claw Raiders were already strong. So, having the big beast on the table was already a thing that you were doing if you were playing competitively. And so obviously that just took it up a notch, being able to do a heroic recovery. You added some more healing to the big boys. Being able to find us hours, amazing. Adding some dispels, all of these things are good. The smaller board size too. Standard boards, we were 24 inches apart, maybe 18 if you were lucky on the battle plan. Now it's like 22 inches. So when your Stonehorns or Thunder Tusks need to get in range, it's very easy to cross that board. And there's ways to buff that movement too. Get a little Keenan Gale on your Thunder Tusk, and you've got that shot at a 4-up +3 to move. Put it near a mystical, becomes a 3-up.
You're getting some love there.
Yeah. He's one of my favorite TOs here in SoCal. He's the guy who TOs the Old Town Throwdown. So yeah, thanks.
And that, by the way, shout out to Old Town Throwdown. When that event was happening, I saw so many pictures and people just telling me how much of a great time they were having at that event. So I wasn't familiar with it before, and now it's one of those ones I'll be definitely keeping on the radar, because it looked like it was just an absolute fun experience from the start, and all the activity that happened afterwards. So
really great crew of guys. It's the first couple events they put on, and already the second event's become the biggest in SoCal that we've had. With what I think it was like 56 players in the end of this last one. So yeah, super stoked that they're putting it on and putting in the work and helping to build the community down here. It was really fun. Had a blast.
That looked like an absolute ball, and I think the Ogor Mawtribes, to segue back, is an absolute ball, because I've always said to people that it's a great army to start with, because it's a cheap army. It doesn't cost you a lot of money, especially to get some pretty high points as well, right? You can get those Stonehorns and Thunder Tusk. We can take up a lot of points. They're quite forgiving. You've got plenty of tools for customization, and then there's a lot of cool options as well. Whether you want to go into the dad bods, whether you want to focus purely on Beast Claw, or somewhere in the middle. And I wouldn't mind getting your thoughts on, I guess, all of that. Like, how has the Beast Claw side kind of handled? How is the dad bods handled? And how is the combo soup kind of handled?
Well, unfortunately for the dad bods, they're mostly sitting on the shelf right now, or with your iron blasters and scrap launchers. They are, just paperweights essentially, because they're not really doing much for you on the tabletop. Gutbusters got
why? Why?
Well, so far as an army goes, our one weak point is that we don't really have a lot of shooting output. I mean, we've got a few little, tricky things between the thunder tusks and some blood vultures. I mean, every other one of our shooting attacks is hitting on fours. Typically fours and threes, maybe rend one D3 damage or one damage in the case of the lead belchers. Um, and yeah, the Iron Blasters has what I think it's one shot, decent range, but you're not really relying on it for any kind of output. I mean, for 120 points, I mean you could put not much else in your list, but you can use those in a combination with other things to get something in your list that's actually going to do something on the table, rather than leaving you feeling disappointed. So, um, and then you know, I'm sure everybody who's familiar with ogres knows that the gut busters are our pals, the gluttons, got hit pretty hard with cohesion and just you having 1 inch range with 40 mil bases, and then being at a minimum size unit of 6 now. It's at 260 points. It's in a really rough place to want to put that in the list. I mean, I've tried because they are a generic battle line, so you can use them, and it's 24 wounds. But 24 wounds on a 5-up save, uh, it's a little rough for the amount of points they're at.
And you're hitting on threes, wounding on threes with no rend, and
Yeah, I mean 2
what
damage.
you know,
So you can maybe sneak
if
some
it
stuff
gets
through.
if you're getting in, I think some of my experience at the moment is I'm just keep coming up against walls of like 3-up armor saves, 2-up armor saves, lots of ward saves as well. So you really need a high volume of attacks, or you need some serious rend. So
Yeah,
I think you're right. Like the coherency rules and just some of the things that, like, the way you're going to have to use like larger bases, anything above 25 mils.
yeah.
Does make it a little bit hard when you go above 5. But I know Age of Something is giving massive love to scrap launchers, saying they are top tier, and I can't disagree. I mean, that's just like move along, Lumineth Sentinels. It is the age of scrap launchers.
I'm gonna field my 3 and see how we do. Let's do this.
One of my buddies in Age of Sigmar 2, Doom and Darkness, another YouTube creator, ran a tournament, ran a list at a tournament. I think he had 2 or 3, the old scrap launcher battalion. He's like, yeah, I'm going to prove everyone right. And I don't think he proved anyone right, but he tried.
Hey, valiant effort. Yeah. I mean, on the other things on the Gutbuster side, I mean, we've got Iron Guts and we've got Lead Belchers. I mean, Iron Guts potentially have a place in lists. I mean, I still think it's still a little bit more on the friendly side than the competitive side when you're doing big blocks. I think it's about 490 points for 8 of them, which is kind of where you probably want to be at with Iron Guts. But then for 60 points less, you get a Frostlord on Stonehorn. So just slightly more durable and arguably about the same output.
Well, you're counting towards more on the objective. You're getting heroic action. You're getting monstrous rampage. So
Yeah.
when you start spending big, I guess right now it's a bit hard to justify. Although you could still run them. Like, if you are a purist, I think the fact that it's got a 2-inch range definitely is okay.
Oh yeah,
But I think if you got the full range, no, the Iron Guts.
Iron Guts, yeah, 2-inch range.
I mean, the 2-inch range.
Yeah.
So I thought you said 3 for a second. I'm like, no, you got 3 attacks.
No. Yeah, 3 attacks, rend 1, 3 damage. It is not bad at all. So they can definitely get some output. And I mean, you can couple them with a couple other things too. You put a butcher in there or a slaughtermaster and give them blood feast, give them +1 attacks. You get up to 4 attacks, rend 1, 3 damage, which is not bad at all. But again, it's just a high point tax for a 4-up save on a infantry unit. And they're only battle lines with Tyrants. So if you're running Tyrants and you're sticking the Gutbusters, I mean, you're obviously going to have Iron Guts in your list. You have to, because they work.
And there's definitely ways you can use your dad bods, your Gutbusters, and in the chat there's some really good ideas. Definitely things like Unleash Hell and having some tools to unleash hell is great. I think the challenge right now is that the Beastclaw Raider side in the current meta, which is the Age of Monsters, is just probably too heavy of an incentive. If you want to top table, if you want to do well at a tournament, you definitely want to be including a lot, if not all, like kind of migrating that side as opposed to maybe more the Gutbuster side.
Yeah. Well, you've got big bodies that are counting as more models on the objective. They got a huge output. They're doing mortal wounds on 4-ups for their charge, and then they tend to stick around a little bit longer too. So there's more opportunities to heal them. And I would typically like to play blood gullet. So when my frost lord gets in there, does damage with his frost spear, he's healing D3 damage to friendly ogres wholly within 12 inches. So, what your other beast riders or huskers or whatever else you're running gets to benefit from that, and they stay on the board just that little bit longer. Keep them in the game, scoring the points.
How have you found the sub allegiances? Have you found, because you mentioned Blood Gullet before? Are you finding like Balderhead, Blood Gullet? I know, from an ogre side, Meat Fist and some of the other stuff is maybe not as competitive at the moment. But how do you find like the sub allegiances?
I had some fun ideas with Meat Fist, but it's mostly just to make a Frost Lord on a 2-up rerolling ones to save, um, because there's the artifact in Meat Fist that gives you the reroll ones to armor saves, which is pretty nasty. I mean, but all the other things don't really do much for the builds that you would normally be going for in a competitive environment. So yeah, that tends to get shelved. Blood Gullet is my favorite. It's amazing. I mean, you've got an extra cast for your wizards. You've got extra spell lore. You've got the healing within 12 inches, and then you've also got an extra 3 inches on your pylons. I mean, not the good kind of extra 3 inches. You have to either have charge or be within 3 inches of an enemy unit to be able to do that. But it really helps you blow past the screens. I mean, when you're doing impact hits and knocking the screens off the board, you can just get right into the juicy bits.
Yeah, I was playing a game last night against Pask, one of the guys in my community, and great guy, absolute lover of ogres and all things Noblars, and he was trying to explain to me the 6-inch piling, because you're right, it's not like the normal Sisters of Slaughter, Bloodthirster type. Cool, I'm outside of 6 inches, I can now pile in. You've got to get into combat, and then it just allows me to better position when I'm already in, as opposed to avoid things like fighting first to then get in later.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, Blood Gullet's amazing. I've run Boulderhead a few times. Actually, I've come up with a couple lists recently that I think have some play and some viability. Pretty strong alpha list. It's nice having the ability to give out the mount traits. There was that little pocket of time we had where everybody was
triple
like,
metal cruncher,
metal crunchers everywhere.
Triple
You get a metal
metal
cruncher. You get a metal cruncher. You get a metal cruncher. Yeah, it was.
Wasn't there a time that people were stacking, like having 2 metal crunchers on the one Stonehorn?
Yeah, exactly. So you would put metal crunchers on all the other mounts, and then you would get the upgrade to add another metal cruncher onto this guy, right? Or
Which you
I don't know.
can't do from now on.
Yeah.
You can't
I
do
mean,
it. You just
I never built that list. I never did the whole log into War Scroll Builder or whatever and figure that out, because I'm like, there's no way this is going to stick around. Like, this is not going to be a thing for long. But still there are a lot of good other mount traits that are in the book. You've got the granite tooth for +1 to charge, which is really important because you need to get your charges off. You've got the Alvagar Ancient for fight last on your Thunder Tusks. What is it? The other one, Black Clatterhorn for +1 to hit on the horns, which is the only thing you really need +1 to hit on a Stonehorn. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's some really good builds. Yeah, like with Frostlord on Thunder Tusk, Prime Frost High, Amulet of Destiny. Exactly. You got the unkillable Thunder Tusk. He's -1 to hit, -1 rend, and then 5-up ward save is pretty nasty. And making
the
civilians
Amulet of
battle line.
Destiny. The Amulet of Destiny is just absolutely causing havoc. I was saying in a chat today, I'm like, I wish they would just put it onto models with 10 wounds or less, really reduce that, because when you start putting it onto a Frost Lord, when you start putting it onto a Mega Gargant, the value just explodes compared to, your Butcher who's got an Amulet of Destiny.
Yeah, or a 35 wound or 40 wound Mega Gargant. I mean, there's there's always that too. But yeah, I mean, I've tried that out. I think there are some viable builds in there. The was it Winter Bite is -1 to hit against shooting. That's not bad. it can be good in some metas, but I just overall I haven't really found it to work out that well for me. I think that's also the one where you get the bonus if you're using Yetis. Um, so they get the fight first. So if you're doing that build, I personally don't own any Yetis. I wish that I did, but maybe a slightly better sculpt. Sorry,
I was gonna say,
sorry.
3D printed ones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wish I could find some decent 3D printed ones, but so far, if anybody out there has any tips on some 3D printed Yetis, please drop it in the chat. I'd love to know. Um, but yeah, so there's Winterbite, and then what is the last one? That's um, Thunderbellies, I believe. That's
Yeah,
the one.
Thunderbellies. Yeah,
Thunderbellies.
Thunderbellies.
And honestly, I've never played with that many Thunder Tusks. So I mean, I think it's the Morn Fangs get to charge up the side of the board. Um, just never really got that much play with that one at all.
You do get +1 to the charge roll, and I think I wanted to pause you on that because I can't remember which was the other tribe that gave you pluses to the charge. But one of the things that you've noticed in third edition is people using redeploy to make that charge just that little bit harder, especially because you can only re-roll a charge once. So getting that, I found there's situations where that +1 or +2 has made a huge difference. So don't underestimate something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. The re-rolls from the Frostlord definitely come in handy. And then if you're getting any pluses to charge, whether it's from a mount trait, like I've actually considered when there was that little, kerfuffle with the mount traits, I was like, well, what if I just do double Granite Tooth or triple Granite Tooth to make sure that I get to charge what I need to charge? Because that's really where I want to be. I want to be getting into the places that I plan to get, even if they redeploy. But unfortunately, not a whole lot of bonuses to charge these days. I think you've got the +1 off the mount trait, and then if you take that other sub allegiance, the Thunderbellies, that's about it. I mean, I used to love running cogs in the last edition. I was running the Eurobad. I had Frostlord on Stonehorn. You've got a Slaughtermaster for handing out some buffs and getting the casting on the cogs, and then 4-pack of Born Fang, 2-pack, and then a Stonehorn Beast Rider, and that did some work. Yeah, actually, at the first Old Town Throwdown, I got in the top table. Ended up losing against Shootcast because it's just a hard counter with the Aether Wings, but did my best. And it's a good list.
I think one thing as well, like from Ogres, that I think has worked really well in the current meta is just the amount of mortal wounds you can do, whether it's through the Trampling Charge, the Grasp of the Everwinter, through things like Metal Cruncher, the Blood Vulture. There's so much mortal wounds that allows you to handle the current meta where, like I was playing with my Witch Elves last night and they're just like, hitting a brick wall if it wasn't Marathi. And, when you start coming up against like Stormcast Annihilators, which have, a crazy armor save. You've got Blood Knights. There's all these heroes that have like a 2-up or a 3-up with a ward save. Those Gotrek, having mortal wounds up your disposal is just so important to handle the current competitive scene.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much of an answer with Ogres for Gotrek, unfortunately. We just don't have the amount of attacks. Even if you were running a 12 block of Lead Belchers with all the D6 attacks, I think you do still an average of maybe 4 wounds to them after saves and ward saves. It's just there's just not enough there. We don't have Sentinels.
Nobody should have Sentinels.
Yeah, and even at the charges, you're charging them, you're still doing maybe 1 mortal wound. Yeah. So the best answer for Gotrek is just moving around the table anywhere that he is not.
And you've got the speed. You've got the speed to be able to move around and, or even body blocking with Noblars or a cheap unit of Frost Sabers, just to screen him off a little bit. I think you've got some cool tools.
Yeah, that's what led me to putting Noblars into my list more often was things like Gotrek. Just trying to surround him. If he moves up, redeploy to kind of block him off and just keep him wherever contained in that area and let him kill the things that you put in front of him. So you got to feed him a little bit, but that's okay. We don't mind him.
Speaking of Gotrek, we're in a pretty heavy meta where there's like, Archaon, Marathi, even Alariel's kind of got her return on the table. She heals 2d6 wounds, a hero phase. how are you finding the hero hammer kind of style at the moment? Ogre's in a good spot.
Ogres are in a great spot. I haven't had any problems with the big bosses, like with the Archeons, the Nagashes, the Marathis. Um, but I typically build my list with an answer for that, and with Archeon, or double Maw Crushers or whatever it is, just make sure that you're the one getting the charge off. You can with four big boys and maybe a fifth if you do a cheeky metamorphosis on one of your wizards, you could do. I think it's on the average, 7 times 4, 28, so 14 mortal wounds on the charge from 4 monsters. So that's nothing too bad. And if you've got a metal cruncher in there, tack a couple more on. You've got some blood vultures. I mean, you can take an Archeon off the table potentially before combat even starts. Maybe you'll reflect some mortal wounds back to you that you can't save anymore, but it's a price you have to pay. It's a price you have to pay. Yeah. Then dealing with like Marathis, that's typically why you'll see the list that I build have 3 blood vultures in it, because I like to be able to see Marathi from across the table and say, plink, plink, plink. Okay, there's the 3 for the turn. Now let's go over to this other business.
Specifically, Little Marathi. You want to go for Little Marathi because
Yeah.
she doesn't have the ability to bounce mortal wounds off with fanatical faith. So
Yeah, that was something I just learned recently. For the longest time,
I
I
told
thought,
Pask last night.
yeah,
I said the way you beat Marathi is you target Little Marathi because she's not allowed a ward save, just because of the language that it is between transferring wounds between the Shadow Queen. But yeah, you're right. Like, you've got 3 cheeky vultures just to throw at her, and boom, she's gone by the end of turn 2.
exactly, yeah. And there's times where you get the 2 wounds on her accidentally, and you're like, oh man, one more turn, one more turn with Marathi on the table. But yeah, everything else you can just bull right off. I mean, ogres are in a really good spot. The hero hammer thing. I mean, we've got the heroes, we've got the hammers. It's okay. It's quite all right.
Is there any units that maybe in 2nd edition people weren't playing around with that have found value in 3rd?
That's a good question. I mean, I never played with the Thunder Tusk in 2nd edition, and I only added them in 3rd because of them becoming a priest that could do other things. Um, you can now dispel with a priest in your opponent's hero phase. You've got access to a couple other little things, smite or adding a bless in there to one of your units that maybe doesn't have a ward save. Um, so yeah, that's something that's made it into my list more often. Um, Yetis have been appearing more often as well. It seems like. Especially because of the Frost Lord on Thunder Tusk now getting the Amulet of Destiny is a thing. They're like, okay, I have a general now who can survive on the board, and I can get these Yetis to do things, piling in and attacking before anybody else gets to move. So that's pretty much it for the most part. It seems a lot like Eurobad redone without the mortal wounds from the hits.
I know when we were talking before the show kicked off, and I played a game I mentioned against Pask last night. One unit that really surprised me that I hadn't seen in 2nd edition, and it's now in 3rd edition. I think it's a really good choice. Is that Underworld's Warband, the one? What's its name?
You're right, Rothgorn. Yeah. I mean, he's a good addition. Rather than taking the Ice Brow and the Frost Sabers, you can take that guy as a little cheeky. Hey, guess who's in your backfield now? Soren Savage Spearhead. So yeah, he's great.
So it counts as 2 because it's 2 units, right? Because you've got the hero and then you have the unit.
So it's actually 3 units. So because you have Hrothgorn, you have the Man Trappers, and then you've got a Frost Saber that he brings along with him. So you get 1 free kitty cat that just comes along with him. And then on top of that, you get a nice little trap that you can put somewhere on a terrain feature. So it has to be outside of your opponent's territory, but it's pretty nice because it's just whoever moves there first on a 2-up, it's D6 mortal wounds. For 170 points, it's a really good value unit. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I was really surprised because what my opponent did was there was a really large piece of terrain, and well played to Pask. It was arcane. and it was on my side of the board, and I wanted Marathi near it to get, Mind Razor off. It's a hard spell to cast, and he put the trap there, and I'm like, right, do I get a cheeky mortal wound or maybe 3 mortal wounds onto Marathi by going within range, or do I have to sacrifice some of my unit in order to take the bullet, and then Marathi kind of sneaks in? And I thought it was a really cool and interesting rule that I'd never seen before, and I
Yeah,
like it a lot.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Just even the mind games behind it. I mean, just taking that little trap, and if you're playing in person, putting it on a piece of terrain in the middle of the table. Saying like, okay, this is a no-fly zone for you now, or are you gonna risk it? What are you gonna do? You can kind of turn your opponent's attention into another direction, or force them around that terrain piece if they really don't want to eat the d6. So yeah, I like that a lot.
What do we feel about some of those other heroes? Like you had obviously the Butcher and the
Yeah,
Slaughter
Lars
Priest.
Lars is talking fire belly.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say like they're popular builds. What about some of the other not so popular heroes?
Oh, you can.
Firebelly's one of them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I the Pask played me with a list at one point. I think it might have been Pask at one point, where it was a fire belly on a Balewind Vortex casting Billowing Ash, so that you had a nice big bubble of -1 to hit, and you could kind of get them up the table a little bit and still have your stuff in combat while having this -1 to hit bubble around you. There might be a place for that. Usually, I find it's hard to get the little heroes up the table for that kind of stuff. Um, but I just I find it hard to get the fire belly in a list. I mean, he's definitely got some solid spells, uh, but I don't know. I don't know what it is about the fire belly. I mean, it's a cool model. I
And
should put him on the table more. I mean, maybe
and you
it's just
lost the
because
Balewind.
yeah, and he doesn't have Voracious Maw, which is also a really hard sell. Voracious Maw, like, it's so ridiculous. I mean, you can get one mortal wound or sometimes 17.
If it
So
was more consistent, you'd take it. But you're right. Like you just don't see those types of models on the table very often, and
yeah,
it's a crying shame. And who knows? Maybe there's a day where that gets kind of redone. But it's
yeah.
mostly things like the Slaughter Masters, like
Where's
the
our
Butcher.
Yeah, where's our next book?
Well,
We're hungry for
well,
our next book.
it's rumored to be one of the next 4. That's
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
rumors say.
Looking forward to it. I really hope so. It'd be nice to see how they change things up. Definitely have a wish list of items that I'd love to see happen. Bring out some of the stuff that I've had sitting on the shelf for a while.
It feels like that. Like, like when I look at the crux of the Beast Claw Raiders, and I've been playing against it since first
Mhm.
edition, it feels like it's slightly changed. And, having Battle Line, Stonehorns or Thunder Tusks are great. The combination, it obviously, sometimes we go Stonehorns, then it kind of swings to be all about the Thunder Tusks, then
Yeah,
it kind of swings back to the Stonehorn. It's like this
yeah.
shifting
Well,
pendulum.
there was that time when the Thunder Tusks were doing flat 6 mortal wounds, on a 2-up. So there was definitely a Thunder Tusk meta at one point in
Oh, it's
time.
a character. It was a character killer. It was just like
Yeah.
boom, your five win heroes dead ski.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely I'm definitely glad to have seen that changed. Um, yeah, I think that it's a very two-sided coin with ogres. I mean, with one side being clearly the better side in BCR, um, mixing in maybe a little bit of gut busters. Maybe throwing some iron guts in your list. Maybe throwing, I mean, definitely throwing a butcher or a slaughtermaster in the list for the buffs, because you need those. You need your wind up toys, wind up monster trucks. So other than that, yeah, I mean, playing around with some Yetis, playing around with some Noblars. Uh, yeah, there's some meme hammer in there too.
Yeah, and you've got the tools to score a whole bunch of extra victory points through the battle tactics, which is great. You got the speed, even if you don't take that Underworld's Warband, you got the speed to get into your opponent's territory. You've got usually the 3 monsters to be able to score additional victory points, and you're durable enough that you don't have to give them away as quickly when your opponent kills them. So I think that's why it's just another incentive for the Beast Claw Raider side.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice when you can outbody a Taker Tribe Gargant with 3 stone horns and another little guy. It's pretty hard otherwise to take those objectives back. But yeah, I obviously lean very hard on the BCR side.
No, and we're going to show off some of your lists as well. We'll kind of get a bit of list science and find out a bit more about the experience that you had at Old Town Throwdown. But I think overall, like coherency, again, that kind of works in the favor of the Beast Claw Raiders and makes things a little bit harder, especially if you don't have 2-inch weapons. I think that's the killer for some of the ogre side. The table side seems like it really works well in your favor for the Beast Claw Raiders and just the speed. You're not stretched nearly as far as you used to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a lot. It has a lot to do too with just mortal wound output, because you only really get the mortal wound output in the BCR side. I mean, you could get it in the glutton side, in the dad bod side if you do, 8 or more dad bods in a unit, and you have to hope that they stay on the board long enough to be able to get the charge off for 4 mortal wounds. But that's about it. You're not really going to be getting past a lot of these hard armor saves, which is the name of the game right now. It's like, how do I get past a 3-up ignore rend 1 or worse, 2-up ignore rend 1? And to do that, mortal wounds is probably the quickest, easiest answer if you don't have a lot of rend. So we're doing mortal wounds in the start of the hero phase if you're already in combat through the Everwinter's Grasp. You're doing mortal wounds in the hero phase potentially as well through spells. You've got the shooting phase with the Thunder Tusk, the Blood Vultures. You've got the charge phase, and then you've got the start of combat with some Metal Cruncher. And I don't know, maybe if you throw a curse in there too, huh?
How have you found curse? Because I hate it now. I've tried it. but you have a durable priest that actually is probably going to be in combat. So if you went the Thunder Tusk route, you of all people could make this work. I'm struggling because I'm putting it on things like cauldrons.
I appreciate your confidence, and I really wish I had that same confidence. But I don't know. Like I've tried it out a couple times, and it just never seems to work out. I mean, if my Husker gets into combat, he usually is in a bad spot. I don't like to throw him into combat unless it's a last ditch effort, or if I need to score an objective, or try to tie something up that I don't think can kill him. In which case it's not really something that I'm trying to put down anyway, so there's no point wasting a curse on it, So yeah, I mean, it is kind of a trap thing. You're like, okay, 9-inch range. How are we going to get this going? You can get up the board. I mean, you're always trying for a double turn anyways, right?
that in itself is like where I've struggled, because you are playing for the double turn, it feels like, because you can't teleport inside of 9. So but everything that I'm running isn't as durable, which is probably why I made the claim that, you're in a better position to take on curse, because I'm using things like cauldrons and little priests on foot. You actually have a super durable, high wound leader, good armor saved priest.
There's very few instances I think that you can successfully pull it off, and it probably starts at your list building. I mean, and it just doesn't really work with the way ogres play, because I mean, you're playing a more aggressive play style if you're playing ogres. So I mean, you're with your heavy hitters, they're moving 14 inches, they're going in a different direction, than your Husker, who's going to lag behind 10 inches. So if you're building the list to be a beta list, you're expecting to get alpha, then you're hoping that this person is coming towards your priest, coming towards your Husker, and then maybe you can either, get them to come into where the Husker is, and then striking back. But then at that point, you're getting your heavy hitters and your bodies tied up that you don't want tied up to be able to get that off, and you just don't have the like Tom said, you don't have the attacks to really put it out. I mean, maybe if you've got like 40 to 80 Noblars.
Yeah. Oh no, Noblar meta's coming. Frost
Golden.
Priest on Asgard.
That's our answer for Gotrek. There we go.
40 Noblars. Oh no.
Yeah. All Noblars, 1 Husker on Thunder Tusk. You'll destroy any list that has Gotrek in it.
Oh no! Oh no!
Yeah,
I hope this is not a thing. Andrew, it could be an interesting combination. Andrew saying Iron Guts with Blood Feast and Curse
yeah,
appears to be good. I think the challenge that I'm having is just being in the 9 in order to activate the curse, and then be good enough to actually get the curse off when I need it, and not roll a 1 because I'm a potato.
yeah. Right. Every single time. Um, yeah, I've left it on the sidelines. I mean, the lore prayers that we have in BCR anyways are good. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no reason to not take one of those. I mean, pulverizing hailstorm. You've got the 18-inch range. You pick a point, and then 3-inch bubble, or basically a 6-inch plate around that point. 3 up is another D3 mortal wound. So I mean, it's just another mortal wound output there. Or Keening Gale for the +3 to move, which is more movement is always welcome.
Yeah, yeah. The game's one on movement. Keening Gale is just really good. Before I get into your list, I wanted to ask one other question. I was thinking about this just then around one of the other changes, obviously, with Monstrous Rampage is now all monsters can destroy a piece of terrain. It's not just the Gatebreaker Mega Gargant and the Foxy Fox.
Hmm.
Now every monster can destroy a piece of terrain. And how do you find the more pot? What are you doing around your deployment? Are you finding people are trying to destroy it? Are you finding that it requires protection? Like, what have you
That's the
found
weird
that?
thing. Nobody has tried to destroy the Mawpot, and I think part of it is just because they either A, they forget that they can do it, or B, it's just there's other scarier stuff that they need to deal with around it. So they're either going for Titanic Duel or maybe a Stomp, or w- w- something like that. I mean, so I haven't, like, I even in some of my games, like if I'm playing against, I mean, depending on, like, it's an alpha army, say, I'll put the Mawpot on the deployment line, like right up at the front, just as another screen, and then I'll put my little butchers behind it because then they can't fly over the top. They're kind of stuck at the front of the Mawpot and have to go around it, since it's impassable now, and still hasn't been destroyed once. But I go around just destroying terrain for the heck of it because it's just fun.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah,
Doing it with a Mega Gargant is fun. I think
yeah,
what you said, the latter is what I find myself is like when I can do Stomp, when I can do Roar, because I always want to Roar.
yeah,
As much as possible, I want to Roar to
exactly.
stop them issuing or receiving a command, especially if I do it on a hero, because a hero is not going to be in Hunters of the Heartland. So if I can do it to a hero, stop the CP.
Hmm.
Um, I always just find that destroy terrain is like a low on my priority list.
Hmm. There's a few armies where it's like, okay, this is a thing that you should probably do. I mean, I wish we could destroy KO boats, but that's not a thing. Um, so so yeah, like if you're playing against OBR, I mean, obviously popping their terrain piece is very advantageous if you can get to it, because it's doing a lot of things against us that we don't like
Mm.
-1 to hit, which is a big suck against ogres. Um, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, yeah, I'll deal with a boat. That's fine. There's not a whole lot out there. I mean, maybe the pizza oven. Pop the Fire Slayer's pizza oven,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's just not that big of a priority.
That's where I'm finding it's just not a bigger priority, and I'd rather do other things. But I guess if you're running 3 monsters or 4 monsters, then you've got the tools. But for most people, they're only running 1 or 2, and it's just low priority.
I think what all TOs should now start doing is making garrisonable terrain on all the tables. That way we can take advantage of this more.
Yeah, I've actually had a few people talk about like not just putting on because a lot of TOs now are putting down arcane, mystical, deadly,
Mhm.
presetting their tables. And I think one of the calls that I've seen is people should put down that not only is some of this, arcane mystical, but also some of it is garrisoning defensible terrain.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would definitely impact the game and make some things
Rap,
more worthwhile. But yeah, it'd be interesting how it would shift
rapid
the meta.
rapid fire questions. One, Sky Titan pistols, are they useful or worthy in the shooting list right now?
If you're bringing a Titan, I think you're probably you're probably going to be taking like gruesome trophy racks, something like that. I mean, uh, I guess it depends because of how weak we are on shooting. The Sky Titan pistol actually does kind of hit a little bit, so it might be nice to take that. I'd like to play around with it a little bit and see how it works. Just being able to shoot off a couple of threats. The range is not great, I mean, anything at 12-inch range these days is a tough ask for being able to take out priority targets. So you've got to get up the board first to be able to shoot the things that you want to shoot, and hopefully they don't shoot you first. But yeah, there could be some play there for sure. I like Tyrants a lot right now. I would like to find a way to put one on my list just because they, I mean, they're a pretty awesome model. They've got a decent amount of attacks. They can do a lot on the board with the heroic recovery and then the fate seeker. You know, they're starting off on a 3-up save. Granted, they're only 8 wounds, but yeah, they can do some work. Not bad little hero for 160 points.
The problem I'm finding is that everything I want in my list, I can't afford. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just finding I'm blowing out my list so quickly.
Yeah.
And even like with my Sons of Behemoth army, like I'm ending at like 2010 points. And I'm like, can I get like some coach discount? I've been running them for years. Like, give me a discount. But like, I'm always just over like 5, 10, 20 points. So I'm struggling to get everything in the list. And I feel like the Tyrant is one of those ones where it's like, I want to include you. I can't.
Yeah,
I
can't
don't
we
have
just
the
bring
points.
all our toys to the table? Okay, we're playing
Yeah.
Armageddon now. Yeah.
We're back to where Warhammer Fantasy was, which was we went
Yeah.
to 2,500 points, and we haven't learnt our lesson.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting one. Another question,
Kragnos.
because
No.
because last time I talked about ogres, Craggy wasn't around. So where do we stand on Craggy in ogres?
I mean, the things that Kragnos is doing, I feel like you're doing already in ogres, but for cheaper, and not really benefiting much from the allegiance outside of, you know, like a little cheeky extra pylon in the blood gullet. You know, um, he's expensive for an army that already has expensive models that you want to take. Um, so I haven't been able to find any way to put him in a list that makes it competitive. Um, which is sucky.
Because for the price of Craggy, you can get 2 Stonehorns, or
Exactly.
some type of combination. Do you think Craggy might fit well with the Dad Bod Gut Busters?
I mean, yeah, he could definitely fill in some gaps there. That might be a solution. I mean, if you run a Tyrant General and some Iron Guts, maybe some Lead Belchers, and then throw a Craggy in there, that could be a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Frostlord and Stonehorn though is still so
And
good.
and
So
that's the
good.
argument, is that,
Yeah.
do you take, because you could probably take 2 Frostlord on Stonehorns almost for the
Yeah.
same price.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the 2-up save and the ignoring the spells is nice, but not having a ward save hurts. Um, and then he's
Not
only
counting his
not
not
counting
counting
his
his
not counting his
10.
10 models exactly. Yeah, that also hurts. But he's 5 models. It's reasonable. I think he's still better placed. I mean, if we're just talking destruction armies, I mean, Gloomspite gets
Yeah.
Iron Jaws. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I guess you could argue Gargants too.
Well, the problem with Gargants is that you just run out of points, because everything's almost pointed at the 500 point mark, and because
Yeah.
it's like 700 points, it's just like, what do you do with these points?
Yeah.
Speaking
I
of
think
megas,
ogres do very well with just themselves, which is probably why they don't have very
yeah,
many useful allies. Tragus, not really gaining much from putting those guys in there. But yeah, I like the model. I like the model a lot. I wish I could put Craggy in the list, but I think he's gonna his home is with my Gloomspite Gits for now.
yeah, I would agree, especially with the I agree. But you mentioned megas, and and after this, I swear we'll go to the list, folks. I'm sure people are wanting, like, oh, what is Chris's list? We will go to it in a second. Megas.
Megas.
Is it the same conversation about Craggy? Like, do we bring in a mercenary mega into a list, pros and cons, or do we just stay in house?
I still think you stay in house. I mean, I think there could be an argument for like a gatebreaker. I mean, maybe even the taker guy. What is it?
The Kraken Eater?
The Kraken Eater. Just for kicking the objectives down the field so that you can keep them with your bodies. But yeah, I don't know. Like I like the Gatebreaker a lot because of the Ren 3 and the Ren 3 shooting attack for 4 damage. I mean, that's super nice. It's scary to have on the other side of the table from you, so it'd kind of be nice to have it on our side of the table, and to actually have some decent shooting, even though it's only like one shot. Uh, there's some other cheeky stuff that I like, with just like stuff them in the bag, breaking cohesion with that. I haven't done it yet, for one, because I don't own a Mega Gargant.
Mm.
Um, so I would be interested to play with it a little bit, because I think there is something there you could do. Uh,
I think that kicking at the objective and really following up, especially if you're running the Beast Claw Raiders side, being able to kick the objective, one, in some battle plans, you can change the value of the objective, but two, it means that you can keep your force moving forward as opposed to, or even kick it back while you're super durable, as opposed to trying to defend. And, you're always wanting to be moving. So it kind of complements that well.
Yeah, it could make up for some shortcomings, where you've got something like the Vice, for instance, where you want to push up the board, but that first turn you've got to kind of leave the objectives behind, and if you're running against any army that has teleports, which a lot of them do these days, you worry about who's going to pop up behind you, steal an objective for an extra point, and then come after you from your rear. So
Mm.
I mean, yeah, it would be nice to be able to kick that objective up the board. I think there might be some play there.
It's just, but I guess the challenge is it's 500 points. So,
Yeah,
what are you losing? And I think,
yeah.
and,
Or you
and you
or you
don't
could
get.
just or you just throw Noblars in the list. That's the answer for everything. Let them sit on the objective.
And I know some people are joining us late, but the Underworld's Warband is awesome. Definitely worth considering. Hawthorne, definitely consider bringing it in. But I think the challenge, and Aegis Something has said perfectly, is that Mega Gargants, when they're mercenaries, don't count as 20. So
Yeah.
you'll only count as 5. And
And you're losing a CP too, which is you kind of need that. You kind
yeah,
of need that.
yeah. So again, you're probably better off sticking with 1 to 2 of your own natural beasts. That's we've got one of your lists. This is your Old Town Throwdown list.
Yeah, yeah. I still love playing this list. It's nasty. Uh, Kind of catches people by surprise, it seems like, because they don't expect ogres to play a little bit cagey and then go for the punch. They expect you to come up the board, but yeah, it's a blood gullet list. Beastmaster, obviously obvious pick for the grand strategy, and bloodthirsty.
Why?
Uh, well,
Just in case it's
you're
not so
yeah,
obvious.
yeah, your biggest and most durable things on the board are what's going to win you the game, and if you lose them all, then you probably lost already. So, there's a good chance that you're going to have at least one of them left on the board. Frostlord doesn't die easily, so um, I usually manage to get the Beastmaster. There's been a couple games where it was just the Butcher left, or just one thing. But yeah, for the most part, most games they stick on the board. So yeah, you want to just go ahead and start kind of breaking it
Yeah.
down here?
Yeah, well, I might read it out just for anyone who's listening to the podcast later. But you've got yourself, so we've gone Blood Gullet, you got Beastmaster and Bloodthirsty as your triumph. You've got yourself the Stonehorn on Thunder Tusk, which is the general, which has the command trait Nice Drop of the Red Stuff, and Splatter Cleaver with Metal Cruncher. You also got yourself Huskard on Thunder Tusk with the Blood Vulture. You got yourself the Skull Shard Dragar.
Yeah, everybody does that. I just say the auto unbindy thingy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. It's just
skull shards of Jagar. Yeah,
yeah, cool. And you got the Keening Gale, Slaughtermaster, which has Rib Cracker and the Molten Entrails. You've gone extra enhancement of a spell, right? That's where the second spells come from.
no, this is actually from Blood Gullet, so you don't have to take the
Ooh.
extra spell enhancement. You get an extra spell cast and an extra spell from your lore through Blood Gullet. Which
Cheeky. Because I was going to ask you about that. Because I'm looking at this, going, wait a second, how's he got an extra spell when he hasn't got the enhancement?
yeah, that's what does it. It's a beautiful thing. That's part of the reason why I put two guys in there, because I want to have a lot of buffs and debuffs. Um, so yeah, the Blood Gullet is giving you the nice things, nice drop of the red stuff. That's the +3 to your pylon moves off the general, wholly within 12 inches. And then the artifact Splatter Cleaver is the heal D3, wholly within 12 inches, if you do damage with one of the one of the melee weapons from the Frost Lord. So I usually put it, obviously on the Frost Spirits is only decent melee weapon, and then Metal Cruncher for the Mount Trait, which is the D6 mortal wounds at the start of the combat phase to an enemy that's within 3 inches, and they have to have either a 4-up save, 3-up save, 2-up save, or have the War Machine keyword. So if you get in with a Bastillodon that isn't bracketed yet, you're not doing a Metal Cruncher on it. Which is, you have to kind of plink it a little bit and drop its save down to 2 before you can Metal Crunch it. But all those things happening within 12 inches, and then the Frost Lord on top of that having the command trait or command ability to allow you to reroll charges wholly within 12 inches makes for a nice combo to get up the board and start doing some damage.
Is it failed charges or just charges?
Just reroll charges.
Which is great because I've seen people. That's what I thought, because I'm pretty sure when I've played some opponents and they've gone in at 3 inches, right? And they're like, right, I'm going for 3-inch charge, and they roll a 5, and they'll re-roll that because they want to get the potential of more mortal wounds.
Yeah, and I end up using it a lot. I mean, I almost pop the CP for that almost every charge phase, because even if it's only 2 Stonehorns around it, or a Stonehorn, a Husker, and Thunder Tusk, it makes it worthwhile. I mean, for one, you could fail a charge, but then you could also roll really low. And the plan is to make a long enough charge to where you're getting into the key pieces, or getting close enough to those key pieces, being able to do enough mortal wounds as well with your charge to be able to blow off whatever's in your way. So yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, I rolled a 5, let me re-roll it, and then you roll your boxcars, and this all of a sudden you're behind their lines and doing mortal wounds to their general. So it really helps out a lot. The Thunder Tusk is in there for buffs and also for a Blood Vulture. So obviously with prayers, the Keening Gale is the +3 to movement we were talking about, and then the Skull Shards for the auto unbind. I don't know, like, thinking about it lately, I've kind of been wondering on whether or not the extra enhancement is worth the drops, because right now this is a 4-drop list because of the command entourage. So you've got the Husker, the Slaughtermaster, and the Butcher in the command entourage to get that once per game auto unbind, which is, it can be clutch. But I'm just wondering if a 2-drop list is better than a 4-drop list when it comes to certain scarier builds that are out there. So yeah, it's so far it's worked really well though. I mean, you get that key clutch unbind when Kairos is trying to do 6 mortal wounds to you, or Marathi's casting Mind Razor in your case, which you never want that
Never
going off with.
and rarely, or I rarely get off. But yeah, having some extra unbinds is just helpful.
Yeah,
and really helpful.
And unfortunately, even though you're getting the extra cast and the extra spell from Blood Gullet on the Slaughtermaster and the Butcher, they don't get an extra unbind. So there's still single unbinds on each of those. So it's nice to have another one in your back pocket in case you need it.
And I think it was Bartik was saying as well. When I was just re-looking at the spells, and you've got some really good spells. I remember Blood Feast being really good, Rib Cracker's good, Molten Entrails is good. Like, there's at least 4 really good spells, and I can see why you'd want to have 2 options. Your Slaughtermaster it's not a double caster. It's just you got 2 options for a spell, right?
No, he is a double caster, and the Butcher is a double caster. So I am using typically all my casts, in a given turn. Probably the longest Ogre Hero phase you ever see, between the Huskered Praying and then 4 spells. But yeah, the Rib Cracker is the -1 to save. So you can cast that on an enemy unit within 18 inches. Really great to get through some of this high save stuff that we're running into out there. Molten Entrails to back that up to give +1 damage to the mounts. So the Stonehorn Beast Riders of the Frost Lord on Stonehorn, now their horns become, well, their base damage 3, +1 off the charge, plus another one for Molten Entrails. So they're damage 5 when they get in there. And then on the Butcher, well, the Butcher has the natural spell on his War Scroll for Voracious Maw, does some damage, D3 damage on a 4-up. It keeps going. So he can kind of be a little nasty, or at least scare your opponents if they're within his range, and he gets it off. Because yeah, D3 mortal wounds on a 4-up, it just goes again. And like I said, I've gone up to about 17 mortal wounds on that from one cast, which was insane. just melted the thing that was in front of it. Greasy Deluge is -1 to hit. When that really comes into play against certain other armies, like if I'm running up against another ogre player, they hate Greasy Deluge. If I'm running against Gargants really hate a -1 to hit.
Yeah.
And then
Even like I've had a couple of my heroes being roared at and not being able to use all that attack, for example, and often, especially like if I use Finest Hour and I go right, it's hero phase, I'm going to do Finest Hour, I'm going to go into combat, I get roared at. It's almost like I'm not fulfilling my full potential because I want to get that +1 to hit. So if you're able to roar and then apply a -1 to hit, it's just like a double negative buff. So
yeah. It can hurt. It can hurt a lot of units out there and keep you on the board for a little bit longer. So it's
I was
nice to have
just
that
I
there.
was just rereading Flesh Crave Curse, and I'm like, wait a second,
Oh yeah,
do you give me an extra attack? Like, am
yes.
I reading it correctly? You do mortal wounds to me, but I
So
get extra attacks.
on version 1.0 of this list, I actually had the Flesh Crave Curse in there on the Slaughter Master because I wanted to give him an option to do some mortal wounds as well in casting. But that problem I ran into was more often than not, whatever was in front of him that I was going to do that to was going to hit him back so hard that it just was not worth the. You're running into some Ard boys or some some brutes, and you're like, oh yeah, let me just do D6 mortal wounds. Maybe I'll kill one of you guys and then give you +1 attacks.
Imagine that you then lose the priority, and
Yeah,
your opponent gets a double, and then they've just got this thing running
yeah,
around with extra attacks until your next hero phase.
yeah. So I ended up ditching that. It is kind of one of those like, oh, Hail Mary here. But yeah, the last spell on the Butcher, Levitate, because who doesn't love a flying Stonehorn? You've got so basically with those buffs there. Oh yeah, and the Slaughtermaster has his ability where he can reach into the pot and basically play a little game of what are we gonna get on a 3 or 4? It's +1 to hit. That's what I'm always fishing for. Sometimes you get it. Other times you roll a 1 and he chokes on a bone and takes D3 mortal wounds and follows that up with a miscast. But so you get a +1 to hit. You basically are playing wind up toys. You can take a Stonehorn Beast Rider or a Frostler on Stonehorn. You give them +1 to hit potentially. You're going with +3 to move. You're throwing Molten Entrails on there. You're throwing Levitate. You're probably throwing a Mystic Shield on there, and then you're just sending them down the field and say, go either kill something or at least hold it up for a while. And then yeah, that's pretty much the basis of the list. I mean, Mornfang pack, a little bit more of a screen, more than anything, it's just a cheaper battle line. Noblars are my main screen, and then the Stonehorn Beast Riders. They're very swingy on their damage output when they're actually in combat. It kind of sucks when you send them out there unsupported without a hero on them because they're not an elite unit. They can't self buff, but they have Blood Vultures for plinking units at range, and they still get impact hits. And then there's times when they can do a lot of damage, especially if properly buffed before they go off to whatever they do.
What about things like Arcane Tome with Flaming Weapon? I know I've seen some other lists like Frostheart Phoenixes and certain other monster mounts kind of using like flaming beaks and things. Is there a place with that in your type of list, or are you giving away too much by taking a different artifact?
Yeah, I think that the artifacts that we have, I mean, I hate giving up Splatter Cleaver. That was the hardest thing about when I was switching over to building Boulderhead lists is I just hate dropping the Splatter Cleaver because it's just so good. You got Brand of the Spard there, and then you've got to give something up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very hard to do that, and then when you're putting that on another hero that's not one of your wizards and they're going to be off in the field and there's no plus to cast, so it's just very swingy as to whether or not you're even going to get it off. So yeah, I tend to stay away, let my wizards do the
Question.
wizarding.
Yeah, I think the challenge as well is that there's a lot of unreliability with Magic. There's just a lot of dominant Magic in the meta right now, and you don't have a lot of natural casting benefits. It's not like you're running around with +1, +2, +3. So, and you don't really want to be hugging arcane terrain and hoping for arcane terrain. So I think not having it's obviously really helpful, but don't overinvest.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is because of the big bases on the Butcher and the Slaughtermaster, you can actually position them. So you drop your Maw Pot if you get the side with Arcane, right? Drop your Maw Pot, keep it 3 inches away from the Arcane terrain. And you can have your Slaughtermaster and your Butcher both potentially at +2 to cast. Because they'll be getting +1 from Arcane and +1 from the Maw Pot. So it makes it a little bit more reliable if you get lucky on the draw. But other than that, yeah, +1. Most of our spells are going off on a 7, so not super reliable, but you'll sneak a couple through.
Yeah, you will. The fact that you got a double caster as well makes it helpful. If it was a single cast, different story. But the fact you've gone double casters,
Yeah.
hopefully you get at
Oh,
least 50.
my favorite thing about Gur. So Metamorphosis in ogres is freaking money. Like, I love it. So all of a sudden you're casting this Metamorphosis on a 5, and your Slaughtermaster or your Butcher or your Tyrant or whatever it is a monster that now counts for 10 on the objective, and they
Yes.
get impact hits on a 4-up. So it's pretty amazing because the keywords just line up perfectly.
And you got the command ability allows you to fight at the top of the bracket. So if you do
Yes.
happen to have a half wounded Frostlord on Stonehorn or something, you're able to pop that CP and then fight at the top bracket. So that's another great thing that again, there's another advantage why the Beastclaw Raider side is just so much superior right now. And I'm having this issue with Daughters of Cain right now. I'm playing Witch Elf Daughters of Cain. It's just snakes are just so much better for so many reasons. And do I stick true to my dad bod ogres or my witch elves, or do I just lean into what's strong right now? And it's just right now the meta's leaning a certain way.
Yeah. I hate to see what happens after Gur. It's going to take away some of our fun toys, but also excited. So
yeah, enjoy it while it lasts. But
yeah.
Matt's made an interesting comment, and I do want to ask about Noblars because I have not seen a Noblard list for a long time, at least on the table. I think people talk about it and joke about Noblars, unless you're Pask. But how are you deploying? How does this list play? Because the game that I had last night, I am used to ogres being deployed at the deployment line, and usually, or at least in second edition, they would run up you. They would just charge early. They would hit you quick, and then grind you down and pin you in your objectives in your deployment zone.
Yeah.
How are you deploying?
I can't say that I have a set deployment because obviously it's very dependent upon what you're playing, right? So, I mean, if you're playing against a KO player, you don't really have much choice. You just got to put everything on the line and hope you can get to whatever boat or objective that you want to get to. Other armies, I'm putting the Noblars on the line, and 20 Noblars still, even with coherency rules, can take up about 30 inches of real estate, just strung out. You keep your little bubbles on the end so that they don't break coherency rules. Maybe put a couple coherency checks in the center, just in case somebody does a mortal wound or two and starts dropping some off. But Noblars are a really great and cheap screen. And then if you don't need the screen, then they're great to hang out in the backfield and prevent deep striking and just hold an objective. Also, I use them for Go Trek, and they can also eat an Unleash Hell pretty well. So typically Noblars are just either a screening on the front line. I'm giving away the top of the turn and saying, okay, go ahead and come at me and kill some Noblars, or they're going to hang out in the back and everybody else is on the line.
Good for especially I've been reading the new Stormcast book, and as you can imagine, Stormcast like to come in from reserve, and you can only imagine having just a nice screen to be able to block off reserve deployment.
That's 100% why they ended up making in the list. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I got scared by the new strike down mortal wound Stormcast. I'm like, oh wait, so they just come down? Okay, one can come in 7 inches. Oh, and then the rest of them within 9 and just doing mortal wounds. That's scary. Oh, and then they also do mortal wounds in the charge. Oh, and they do mortal wounds when they die. Okay, well here we go, Noblars. Have fun with that. Yeah, it was actually my game 3 at the Old Town Throwdown too. Great guy. We played a really tight game, and between the Noblars, the Mournfang, and then the rest of my units, we played on the Vice. I managed to just screen out my half of the board from any deep striking until turn 3. And so he didn't even bring him down until turn 3. And of course, at that point, the Noblars are pretty much chipped away, but I got to chip away at a few of his key pieces too. So yeah, super helpful having these screens.
Does this list change much if you were to swap it out to, a different type of sub-allegiance? So you move away from Blood Gullet and you go into Boulderhead, for example?
Yeah, I don't know if did you get the other one I sent you for Boulderhead?
No, I do. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I'm just
Oh
asking
yeah,
because
yeah,
some people might have a preference to go another way. Like, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
we'll go to the other list in a sec.
Yeah, so it changes a little bit, and because you want to take advantage of the sub allegiance for Boulderhead giving you mount traits, you want to have more mounted heroes. Now, a lot of times people will lean into the Frost Lords, but you're eating up some points there. I've kind of been toying. This is the list that I've kind of been toying around with a little bit, and I've put it through some more trials to see where I end up on it. It's got Huskers on Stonehorn, which kind of like fell out of popularity when they were no longer a Eurobad tax. So, um, but I look at it this way: they're 20 points more expensive than a standard Stonehorn Beast Rider, and then they're a hero, so they get to stand alone. They can go off on their own and support themselves with command abilities, and then of course you get heroic recovery, finest hour, um, which is also great. So yeah, here you've got a list that's got a very strong alpha strike. You've got an Icebrow Hunter, Frost Sabers as battle line because he's the general. So Icebrow Hunter can either deep strike with a unit of Frost Sabers and score you the Savage Spearhead, or you can keep him on the table. And if he's on the table, friendly ogre monsters wholly within 12 inches of them get to add +1 to their movement characteristics for the command trait from Boulderhead. So now you've got Stonehorns that are moving 15 inches instead of 14. So they're going to be roughly within 7 inches at a 22-inch board. Then you've got +1 to charge from one of the Huskers with an old Granite Tooth, which is the +1 to charge. I took rune tokens in the list because re-rolling, you get to re-roll charges, or sorry, not re-roll hits, re-roll wounds, re-roll saves once per battle. You have to declare it at the start of the hero phase, but then it just becomes like an unkillable Frost Lord. So
yeah, I had that last night.
Yeah. I'm still kind of debating on that one too, whether or not I want to keep it in the list or go for something else. But it's super strong. Metal Cruncher, because Metal Cruncher is always great. Black Clatterhorn for the +1 to hit on the horns, and then to kind of just keep the +1s going, so I can use less CP. I kind of spread out the Brand of the Svard on the other Huskard. Still 3 Blood Vultures in the list. Also another reason to take the Huskards instead of a Frost Lord, because you still want to be able to plink 3 wounds off Marathi and keep her at range, or other little pesky heroes. And then the Huskard on Thunder Tusk, which is like just he's like my list balancer. Just being able to have some kind of shooting that I don't have to worry about to hit values.
I was just thinking the Beast Riders can't be put into Alpha Beast Pack, can it? Because it's Behemoth, but then in Ogor Mawtribes it becomes a battle line. So
yeah, so the only way you could do it is if you had a Tyrant or a non-Beast Claw Raider general, and then you could put them in Alpha Beast Pack. But you're not really. I guess D6 move off of those guys. There could be some play in that. Maybe let's play around with some lists. Let's do that.
I think the challenge though with some of the battle tactics is it's too easy to get a few of those early battle tactics by doing the 3 runs to be going for the early claiming of the objectives. And do you need the free run? Maybe if you're going an Alpha Strike and then claim those stuff later in the game.
Yeah, and obviously you don't want to expose yourself too much off the bat because you let your toys taken off early. Yeah.
Frost Sabers though, because you didn't have Frost Sabers in the first list. Why would you go Frost Sabers? Is that like a screen as well? Because you've got the Noblars too. So
it's a points thing. I mean, just to be able to maximize what you're getting from your sub allegiance Boulderhead, having the mounted heroes costs a lot of points. So the cheapest battle line that you can get are the Frost Sabers, but you have to have the Icebrow Hunter as your general. So I mean, you're spending, what is it, 155 times 3, so 165 points for all your battle line.
Yeah.
Leaves you with a lot of other points to play with. So yeah, it's nice. They still do take up a decent screen. They're small cavalry bases, so you can set them out there as screens. Like I said, you can deep strike with the ice brow with one of them. Yeah, and it works well with the Noblars. Like I said, I've only had a couple games practice with it so far, so I don't really know if this is like a final iteration. How I feel about the Huskers on Stonehorns. I like the idea of a self-supporting Stonehorn for 20 more points than the Stonehorn Beast Rider. It might still be better to drop one of those guys and drop the Thunder Tusk and put another Frost Sword in there, because they do punch. Or there's still the builds out there where you can run it with the Frost Lord on Thunder Tusk, which is still awesome. I need some Yetis. Send me your 3D sculpts.
Oh, well, come on. I've seen some interesting. I don't know where they were, so I can't tell you where. But I think that's been one of the Yetis. I've always looked a bit goofy. Even Frost Sabers, like I love the Underworld's Warband, because that Frost Saber is so much better than that weird box kind of Frost Saber. You're not going to buy 100 of those those boxes just to get a couple of Frost Sabers. But I think the interesting part as well, like you mentioned, your list isn't confirmed yet because you're kind of still testing it. But we've got Stormcast coming. We've got the Auric War Clans book, and I can't remember what's been shared and what hasn't been shared. But you can imagine there's going to be some monster hunting.
There's some kill bows, yeah.
Yeah, I'm playing it safe because I can't remember what's been shared and what hasn't been shared. But some of those disincentives, especially if they become really popular in lists, might actually convince you to go a few more of the what are they called, what's the other troop that you guys, Mournfang? You might be more of an incentive to go Mournfang as opposed to your big Stonehorn Thunder Tusks.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the output is of the Cruel Boys yet. We've kind of seen a little bit of a preview from Stormcast. I don't know how much it's going to change, but yeah, these things are all liquid. We shift with the meta, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's something to consider, but could you ally? No, you can't. You can't ally those in because your allies are only the Aelgaz the Gargant, which
maybe a Mire Brute. If Mire Brute is a Trogoth, I can probably ally a Mire Brute in.
Yes, you could actually, because unlike Gloomspite Gits, who ally with specifically Bone Splitters, you ally with Trogoths.
Yes.
So, ooh,
yeah,
ooh, whoa, that's
yeah.
So
we'll see. I'll have to wait and check out these books. Get some ideas for it tomorrow, because unlike you guys, we haven't seen the previews yet.
Yeah, actually, that's a good shout. That's a really good shout. Obviously, we're recording on the eve of it being up for pre-order. So, if you watch this in a week's time or longer, you will have more intel than us. But having, yes, you could do your Dank Hold and your Fellwater Troggoths or your Troll Hag from Forge World, but anything that has the Troggoth, assuming that they share the same keyword,
it does have a Troggoth keyword. I know that much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know what else in the book might have it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think many, but and after this show, I'm actually going to have a look, which is unhelpful to everyone who's watching this live. But and Cast and Play, there's a couple of cool, interesting 3D sculpts out there. So if you like me, who doesn't like the boxes, might be some options. But like I look at your list and I like it. I think it definitely plays to the strengths of Gur. Now, as you mentioned, when we move out of Gur, when we start playing in Shimon or somewhere else, and like when we start playing in different things and maybe monsters aren't so important, obviously this will evolve and things will change. But you're definitely playing to the strengths of 3rd edition in the battle packs right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see how it changes. Hey, I was doing okay with them in the in 2nd edition. Hopefully, they continue to stay strong and low-key, continuing forward.
And by the way, Colin, yes, you're 100% correct. The Troll Hag is now like 405. Like,
oh, seriously?
Yeah, that was spiteful, and they're like 405, so like they're outside of ally. So that's not even good shout there, and hopefully hopefully it's not a 405 for the Cruel Boy one as well.
Yeah.
That would be spiteful. Is there anything that kind of like? Sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, is there any advice or anything you've kind of picked up from the battle tactics, or any things that you've kind of learnt now that would be helpful for a new player, or maybe someone who's not getting in the reps just yet as an ogre player to know for 3E?
I think that there is a strong urge when you have big toys to just push forward and just expect to crush whatever's in front of you. But maybe try to play it a little bit slower, play to the objectives, and get your charges off when they make sense. That's probably the best advice I could give for playing them. And yeah, just have fun, man. But either way, build what you like. If you like the dad bods and some lead belchers or even some scrap launchers, go for it. There's no reason that you have to build into the competitive side of the list. I mean, that's the kind of games that I like to play, but not everybody does. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the key to this show, folks. It's not about saying that Chris's list is the only list to run. It's just, here's an example of how Chris is thinking about it. If you don't own any Stonehorns, but you own Thunder Tusks, cool. What can you do, and what are some of the lessons that we've picked up here you could apply into your Thunder Tusk build? Equally, if you really love your Yetis, what could you do and take into a Yeti build, I guess, is the key to this. But I was gonna say something. I can't remember. I've lost it. All right.
G'day, mate.
No. G'day. All right. Last thing, and we'll bring it home, and that is ogres are rumored to be one of the next battle tomes. It'll be one of the next 4. Is the rumor?
Man.
Is the rumor?
I would love to see that. I would love to see. I don't know if it's deserved. There's so many other books that still need some updating. But yeah.
So I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you. What would you like out of the next battle tome, if and when you get updated?
So on my wish list, let's see.
Yeah, because you mentioned a wish list before. I wanted to open it up.
I would like iron blasters and lead belchers to be good, to actually have some options for some kind of even marginal shooting. It doesn't have to be great, but just something that would be worthwhile including. New sculpts would be amazing, but I don't think that's coming in a tome. Let's update some of the fine cast stuff, like we were talking about, the Yetis and the frost sabers. I've heard that maybe there's going to be a new butcher coming at some point in time, which would be amazing to see. I'd like to see. We kind of got a little. I mean, you can't really call it a nerf, but I mean, it kind of was like a nerf when the new counts for models on objectives was changed. So now, where we used to have an advantage with our Mornfang and some other units, we were counting as 2. Now everybody else counts as 2 for that wound count as well. So maybe just giving us a little bump on the objective holding. Maybe bumping us up to 3. That would feel a little bit more appropriate with the way they were leaning things in the past. Yeah, definitely don't mess with the Stonehorns.
It's the Deacon thing. Like leave my good stuff alone. Don't Slanesh my stuff.
Yeah. Maybe having I've seen other people talk about the Thunder Tusks maybe having some more usability. Having Huskards, just Huskards, whether it be on a Thunder Tusk or on a Stonehorn, be a priest. Because for some reason, when they're riding a different mount, they're not a priest. It's just weird. Or having more priests in general, like giving us a generic priest would be great. Because 335 points is a pretty expensive priest.
Would you want endless spells or prayers like Daughter's got?
Yeah, let's give us a giant voracious maw that we just summon on the table. I think we've already got that Ravenous Gnashing Jaws, but I don't think that it really are the ogre lore really leans into that much. They're gastromancers. They're not wizards in the typical sense. So yeah, it's all about food. So maybe their endless spell is a buffet. They just they summon a buffet onto the table.
I was thinking more like a reverse Palisades, where instead of it being a wall going up, maybe like a crevice that goes down and kind of like, you know, the Everwinter kind of collapses the ground. But
Oh yeah, seeing some changes in Everwinter would be kind of cool too. Yeah,
like the old school Everwinter. So I remember old school Everwinter where it was like the Nurgle clock, where, you know, you'd roll a dice and there was stuff this happened, and then the kind of like the environment changed.
yeah, that would be really interesting. Yeah, that would be cool.
There's old school. I'll put my one hot take, and that is bring back Greasiest Goldtooth. Give me a big fat ogre dude. Give me it for the dad bods. Big fat dad bod who's just being carried by Noblars.
We don't have any named character. Give us a Greasus. I'm down.
Yeah. I'm always surprised that you guys didn't get a Prince Vordry for the Stonehorns or Thunder Tusks, because that's just a vampire lord on zombie dragon with one of the different heads. I'm always surprised that there was never a named unique character for the Beastclaw Raiders.
Yeah, they must not have wanted to sculpt a larger belly on this, on just like one torso that's slightly bigger than the rest. I don't know.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think we've kind of wish list. I know it's getting late for you, and this was really cool. I learned a whole bunch. It was great to see how you're thinking about ogres right now. And as the meta evolves, as the battle plans kind of settle, as new armies like Stormcast Oryx and who knows what comes next comes down, obviously this is going to change and evolve. But this is a very strong army. Certainly, you went 5-0. Definitely 4-1 style. You can pick and choose and modify, but I think, you know, Beastclaw Raiders definitely stronger side than Dad Bods, but Dad Bods still have a place. It's just tough right now. It's just tough.
Yeah. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Noblar stonks to the moon, 100%. 240 Noblars and a Huskerdon Thunder Tusk. That's our next build.
No. If people wanted to talk to you, Chris, and find out more or chat to you about ideas, where are the best places to go?
I'm on the Discords. You'll find me on the AOS Coach Discord. I'm, you know, popping in on the Ogor Mawtribes channel, you know, fairly frequently, and you know, answering questions when I can. I also spend a lot of time on Butcher's, you know, on Past's channel. So that's where we're doing another tournament right now, and I'm trying out this list in the international table, so you can pop in there and watch some games. And yeah, that's pretty much it, you know. And if you're local to the US, or, you know, want to make a trip out to SoCal, come join us at the tournament and have a great time.
Definitely check it out, and shout out to everyone who's watched this show, especially for Americans like Warsaw, and who I don't know, he's not the only one. It's getting late in America. But I appreciate you all joining and chatting ogres. But like every good YouTuber out there, I legitimately want to know, how does your list compare to this list? Is there things that you are testing that maybe Chris might get some ideas from? Are there things that you agree with, or maybe some ideas? Maybe you found the way to unlock Curse. If you've unlocked Curse and you know how to get value out of Curse in your Ogor Mawtribes, let me know, because no one I know yet is like an advocate for Curse. It's all theory hammer. They're like, yeah, it sounds great, but no one actually is doing it on the table. So I want to crack this code.
Definitely.
I don't know how to do it.
Let us know. Let us know.
I want
old Eurobad back. Give me 6s to hit our mortal wounds again.
Well, I think you got enough mortal wounds. My armies need mortal wounds. But Chris, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Appreciate it. You all know the deal. Like, subscribe, hashtag, comments, stuff. And thanks for not being mean to me with my new haircut when I went Brittany, because I'm in lockdown and I got sick of my hair. So I'm off. Have a good night. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you. See you guys.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.